Yeah, that's okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Either way,
All right, welcome to the shit show. Alex, I don't even know your last name. Who are you? How
right.
did you end
I
up
should have
here?
put that right. I'm a little extra mysterious, right? It's just like
Yeah,
Alex, like no background,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm Alex Babish, who I even wore my Nuravine, old Nuravine shirt. One of my OG shirts. We like to
Classic.
recycle our shirts. We wear them for a long time.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, so I'm the founder of Nuravine. It's like an automated nutrient dosing company.
Nice.
Um,
For
you
hydroponic.
know, yeah, for hydroponics. I guess I don't want to like run at like just start talking. I guess because I'm a talker, right? I could just say a bunch
Yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff,
no,
but I
man.
want to
You're
make
here
sure that
to.
I'm like answering your questions and stuff. But basically, like obviously you made a post about like terraforming, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so you're like, oh, you're into that. I want to know more about that from you also. But basically, like, why am I even doing this at all? Is because like I've been really interested in like futurism for like a long time, since maybe like 2009, 2010, and like particularly like future cities. I want to build like self-sustaining cities, completely automated, completely robotic. And of course, like growing food is like a part of that. So I just kind of kept taking chunks of like this futuristic like idea and making it like simpler and simpler until it became like some kind of a business that I could start with. And then of course, like once you get into a business, then you're in business mode. You got to provide value to customers like with what they need. Um, but of course, there's just so much more that it can go, right? It's like start from somewhere big,
And
get
and
this.
what's the business today?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So we are one of the top uh, dosing companies in the world, especially for indoor recirculating dosing.
And so
So
just break down dosing even,
hydroponics.
because
Yeah, yeah,
there might
yeah.
be people that don't
Hydroponics
aren't familiar with
101.
that term.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like so hydroponics, it's where you're growing plants in like water instead of dirt. Why do plants grow in dirt? Well, one, dirt provides like a medium, like a structure for them to grow in. And number two, it also provides like nutrition, right? So as long as you're able to provide plants, of structure to grow in, and you're able to provide them nutrition, they don't actually need dirt. And so that's what's hydroponics is, where you're basically growing the plants either directly in water, or you're growing them in an inert medium and then you're like watering them. But you have to add nutrients as well. And so like, basically when you're dealing with like precision farming, you want to make sure that to get the most out of your crop, you want to be giving them like exactly what they need when they need it. And different plants have different levels of precision that they're needed to get the most expression out of them. And so, what's great about hydroponics, it's kind of like taking the driver's seat to like optimizing growth. And so, with a system like ours, like what we essentially are doing is we know exactly how much water you need, how much nutrients are needed, when that's needed, and we're able to deliver the exact amount of water, the exact amount of nutrients to the plants at the times they're needed. We're able to do it in even micro doses. We're able to dose throughout the day, multiple times in the evening or in the night when no one's there. So really just this comprehensive approach to ensuring that the plants have basically the optimal water and nutrients that they need to get the most results.
I love it. I know. I've become a staunch anti-soil guy. I know there's this big
Okay,
debate right now.
interesting. Okay.
Oh my God. You know, there's a debate around is hydroponics, can it be organic? I think there was a ruling on that. And at the end of the day, all of my work has always been hydroponic or aquaponic or whatever, water-based. And when recently I was always agnostic about dirt. I didn't have an expertise in it. It was never my like forte. But then recently I've started learning about the environmental pollutants that find their way into our soil basically. And it's horrific. It's horrific. And I just can't back we need to clean our soil as a nation before we can get to like a place where even organic or that's like 1% of the farmland. 99% of the crops, that soil is uh, dystopian nightmare of industrial pollutants. I mean, it's like
Hmm.
stuff we don't even look for because we don't expect it in there. So I've become anti-dirt. Until dirt is cleaned up, I don't
Hmm.
want to deal with it. And you bring dirt into a hydroponic farm, forget it. You bring pest eggs. There's a mold bacteria in there. It's uh, unbelievably what's the term? Sterile. It's a living environment for sure, but you
Hmm.
bring those into your ecosystem in a. Are they greenhouses or these indoor grows that you work on, your clients?
It's a good question. So, mostly indoor. Like we kind of like the way we got started was like trying to target like a very specific market. So like imagine, the even like one person that is able to run like maybe a cannabis farm in their home. Like, some states even have like plant limits and stuff. So obviously like, I'm jumping to cannabis because that was like sort of where we made, we developed our business a lot there. But yeah, we're working in like, we've kind of expanded the technology to work in like more indoor farms with like multiple rooms. We're in a couple of greenhouses as well, and like we're just kind of getting our feet wet with the outdoor stuff. We're not like putting the machine like outdoors, but you could obviously have this machine um, indoors and just run the pipe outdoors. And so dealing with like hundreds of gallons a minute, um, big fields, that kind of thing. So
Mm,
it's just kind of
wow.
it's kind of
That's a
like
big jump for
yeah,
hydroponic dosing company.
it's a big jump, but it's also like, I mean, because again, like I have like a long term strategy, right? Like, and even terra. So even if we ever do get to talk about terraforming, it's like
Yes,
that is working on outdoor stuff, right? So like one of my thoughts, just to give you an idea of like
please.
outdoor farming, it's like, okay, so you have like 100 acres of land that you're using for farming, right? Imagine you can figure out how to grow food 100 times less in 100 times less space, like indoors, right? So you can literally like use our technology to like build an indoor farm and figure out how to grow that, efficiently. And it is possible to get those, multipliers with like stacking them, efficiency, faster growth, no seasons, like all those things that it multiplies together. So now you have 99 acres, right, of space. What do you do with that? Well, we might want to grow it back, right? We want to grow it back and restore the environment, because obviously a huge percentage of our planet is used for agriculture. It might be up to 50% or 40%. I mean, most of it is animal farming, of course, or like food for animals, which is extremely inefficient. But even so, like it's just that there's so many of these multipliers that we can use, that we can like use our technology to grow food indoors, and we can use the same technology or similar technology to irrigate the land and regrow the forest. And like it's not just like a simple thing, of course, like you can't just grow a forest naturally, but we can use advanced methods. Like one method I'm really excited about is like the Miyawaki method of reforestation,
What's
where there's
that?
a big, it's basically this guy that figured out a way, because it's like, say you cut down a bunch of trees, right, and then you're like, oh, let's replant trees. Like it's like you didn't just cut down trees, you destroyed an entire ecosystem.
Right, each
So
tree
if you
and
just
it's
put one plant, it's like Christmas trees. They don't just like grow. You got to feed them and water them and stuff. But once you get enough things together, you can build its own ecosystem. And they've shown that you can build these like mini farms, or like not farms, like these mini like forests, like about 10 times faster. Like they can grow 10 times faster than
wow.
they would in their natural state. And so like, I just imagine like us being able to solve that problem. Like there's an incubation period. So we might have to have like these kind of shipping containers, which have like a bunch of these species. We could obviously have robots like going out into the jungle, collecting all the different samples, make sure we have the samples there so that we can multiply them, grow them, and then we can use other, planting robots to like basically get those out there, and then, figuring out the irrigation and all that stuff. And then also just like another thing, because it's like, imagine you had 99% of the space for growing, like maybe you use 90% growing the forest, 1% growing the food, and then you have 9%. Maybe you could build an entire like village that is integrated with this
Oh,
forest
could
where
you
you can live.
imagine? Or the
Yeah, like,
forest
and
is
also,
even like part of the landscape
yeah,
architecture of a
exactly. It's kind
neighborhood
of like
or
a theme park. Yeah, it's like these futuristic like places where people can live in nature, and there could be all sorts of land, right? Because it's obviously a forest is one concept. You have like the prairies, you've got
yeah, that could be
the
10
rainforest.
acres. It could be who
Yeah,
knows, That's a big
yeah. So
farm
so
park.
yeah, of course. And so, of course, like, solving this, because obviously also we're trying to go to outer space, right? We're trying to colonize planets. We're trying to build like, systems on space stations and stuff. So it's all these things are all related, right? If we can solve it here, we could solve it there later, So just kind of all taking all these pieces together and seeing like where can we go, because you're saying like, oh, how come, outdoor that's so different from indoor. It's like, well, it's not really. It's just a bigger pump, a bigger flow meter, just a little bit bigger stuff, right? But it's not that different. So like, it's like I have like, you have all these ideas, but then it's like, where am I right now? Like, what are people willing to pay me for? How far is my technology? And like, you kind of just do an optimization problem. It's almost if I could just put all this into an AI and be like, okay, here's all these ideas. What's like the next thing we should do? And it's just like,
Was
okay,
the
we should do
very
this
next
next.
step.
That's
Yes,
kind of the way we decide things.
I'm a big fan recently of the phrase "chop the wood in front of you," because
Yeah.
I'm a reverse engineer. I'm trying to figure out. I early I was one of the first people in the vertical farming space in America, and a lot of what you see now in the industry actually, unbeknownst to most people, came out of my farm back in Chicago. Vertical
Amazing.
aquaponics, the zoning requirements I helped write so that institutional capital could come in. A simple thing like using material handling, pallet racking, that was like a big deal back in 2010. And packaged salads, baby leaf packaged salads. I know it sounds dumb, but at the early days, like everyone was obsessed with, obviously you were growing cannabis illegally somewhere, or if you were, in the above board, you were selling like microgreens and like basil. Nobody was, at any rate. And in those early days, um, it was no one was certain how things were going to work, or what technology was going to like scale this. I think everybody sees an indoor farm and they get excited because they just sense intuitively like this is obviously the future. It feels right, it looks right, it tastes delicious, da da da. And it turns out it's so unbelievably hard to scale. Whereas, on a field farm, it's hard to grow 100 acres, but people run multi-hundred acre farms right now, and even with monocropping and high tech, but you shrink that into whatever its relative size, and it becomes your tolerance limit gets vanishingly small, and all these issues arise. Everyone kind of took existing technology at those early days, got capital, and then just went as fast as they could trying to scale it, and they scaled like all the
Or they
errors, all
scaled
the.
before they were profitable,
Not only
right?
that, they
Yeah.
scaled the wrong system that could never become profitable.
Right. It
And
could
so
never
they
become profitable, right?
and so you're right, they scaled before they were profitable. If they couldn't figure out the unit economics at a small scale, it was like, oh well, maybe the large scale will give us economies of scale, and then no, you just actually increased all your problems
Right.
with the size of the output. I took
Yeah.
the opposite approach. I'm like, at scale, how could it work? If you had 1 million square feet under management, how would those indoor farms operate profitably? And then I would reverse engineer to the point where I could, test the idea on a prototype and then maybe a smaller system. And I never got really out of the hobby sized farming because I couldn't make it uh, profitable in a unit economics. My design constraint, or I had several design constraints. One of them was like, dude, the world runs on pallet racks, pallets, forklifts, shipping containers. These are like the standard Legos of the global economy. If we could figure out how to grow in a pallet, theoretically then you could use forklifts, which drop your like cost of operations. You can use pallet racking, which is like ubiquitous globally and not complex to make if you need new stuff, secondhand markets, all sorts of configurations. And then you can go into like basically any building that could, otherwise be turned into a warehouse. And this took like forever. It took me forever to figure out how to do that, not just like on a consistency basis, but on a food safety basis, and then like getting the right crops that actually make you money on an economic basis. And so I finally figured it out, and this is what this whole endeavor is trying to commercialize. Um, but I'm like a big fan of like, okay, this is my large audacious goal, and I'm gonna take a bite off, and break it down
Yeah.
to the smallest possible, and then you solve the absolute tiniest
Get
problem in front
something
of you.
working.
Yeah, and then it like, okay, at least I'm solving problems in the right direction. So if I do
Yeah.
gain success, I'm gonna end up where I want to be versus like, I don't want to talk ill of the dead, but there's so many startup farms that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and they took like a greenhouse system and they put it in a warehouse, and they're like, look at, and it was like never could possibly work because the lighting and the HVAC and the weight and all these other it is such an interesting problem to
Yeah, I'm just
solve.
wondering. I have a question because, like, we're talking about it's like it's hard to scale, but like I'm wondering, is it like, say you figure out a solution that works at like a smaller scale, like what makes it like harder to scale that solution? Is that like what's the
It,
problem, or is just that you're
that
not
that
as big
killed
as to start with?
No, that killed many startups. For some reason, vertical farming does not scale linearly. It's like a discrete. So I'm a physics graduate, and so everything in
Cool.
my mind is like in these terms.
I get it.
It's like a
Yeah.
discrete stepwise function. So like you
Yeah.
have the farm that works at 1,000 square feet. Hell, the farm that works at 100 square feet will look different than 1,000. And then every time you add a zero, the farm changes. And I don't know exactly why, but it's like guaranteed true. And one of the reasons is like your okay, here's a simple one. Heating and cooling load. So if you have a 100 square foot system, your heating and cooling is like a non-issue. It's easy to get the air in and out. You go to 1,000 square feet, all of a sudden you get these hot spots because now you have a lot more lights, or
Mm-hmm.
and you get to 10,000 square feet. Now you're in a contained area, but you have 100 times more electricity in your space that's producing 100 times more heat, and now you need like a a dedicated plan to get that hot air out of the farm. But
Mm-hmm.
you have this added problem where like the imagine you're just like you have a 100 square foot farm, but half of that is planting area is your system, right? So I have 50 square feet like in a cube, and then I have 500, and then I have 5,000. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, the amount of plants that are like in a hotspot just continuously grows, and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes like really, really important to get that. The tolerance for heat remains the same, but there's more heat, and so the time which your plants could burn just gets
Mm-hmm.
shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter because let's say everything turns off by accident, there's an error. At a 10,000 square feet, you might have 5 minutes to solve the problem before your plants start dying because there's so much heat in the room. That would never be a problem. You could let your thing go overnight at 100 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just not as much heat. And so you have a higher, your plants will
No, yeah.
survive at night.
A lot of sense. I wonder also, like, if you were to say, like, say it was like shipping containers, if you just like stack one on top of the other, like, obviously that's like linear scaling, but like probably there's another issue there, like, because you don't want to
Yeah.
do that. You want to
I, I,
eliminate
I
that.
have literally designed every possible farm configuration you could think of. I've built all the promising ones, and then in the end, I had to invent a new one. In
Yeah.
shipping containers, there's two issues. One is, um, the the you can't get air in and out easily,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
all the walls are blocking airflow. So that
Yeah.
becomes a problem. And then if you have them indoors, you're cooling the inside, but they're pumping hot air out into your
Yeah.
larger facility. So there's a problem there. And then it's like it's a hard space to fit a lot of plants into, and so you're
Mm-hmm.
just like limited by the amount of plants you could fit into a small space. And then there's this weird thing where you still need to move a lot of plants. So let's just say you had like
Mm-hmm.
somehow you had like a wall of like 100 shipping containers.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the plants out of a shipping container that's like 3 stories up is
Right.
not simple. And then the
Right.
volume and the consistency, you need to constantly move these plants in and out. There's just
Mm-hmm.
like it creates all these bottlenecks that are operationally hard to it may be impossible to overcome.
Hmm.
um Imagine taking 40 pounds of lettuce from a 3-story high thing
Yeah.
every week. Well, that lettuce has to travel a path that's not slippery, that won't, there's no stairs involved, there's,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you get into another bubble of shit show, which is like, okay, we could do that, but we'll need a custom this. And
Yeah.
we'll just make this custom
Yeah.
this. We can do
Is there
this.
a thing like that you have, like, it's not like it's like once you have, like, say, like, let's, you could say shipping containers aren't good, but there could be like some system that's kind of like you could build a custom like enclosure that would solve all the issues of the shipping container. Maybe it's bigger, maybe it's a different size, and like solve that. And like that's great. But then it's like once you have like more of them, it's like you have to add some other layer to that to be able to manage them. For example, like say you had like a giant hallway, like maybe you could like then you could slap these things on, but you did have to build that hallway, right?
Exactly. And it's not that they wouldn't work, and
Yeah,
it's not that you couldn't make it work. It's that the expense of the valley of death, it's so much R&D is required to get there,
yeah,
and you may never get there. That all these companies have failed. Basically, they can't R&D their way. There's a famous one, Plenty, and I love
yeah.
Nate, and I know he's going to do well, but his technology was originally for hobby-sized greenhouses, and I only pick on them because they raised about $1 billion. So it's
Right. They
not
were
like,
like right. Jeff Bezos invested in them, I think.
yeah, Jeff Bezos, the WeWork investor, who's that guy,
Oh
the
right.
the Vision
Adam
Fund,
Neumann.
and
Yeah,
I
he's
remember the day
hilarious.
they got $200 million, like, oh, it's
Yeah.
over, they won. And it turns out the actual just design of that piece is not suitable for indoor farming. Maybe, I believe it's an excellent greenhouse technology, but like it was designed for a passive diffuse light source moving across the sky.
Yeah.
And you can't mimic that indoors easily. And so they had to hang lights, which caused a
Mm-hmm.
lot of heat, and they solved that with expensive HVAC. But then getting a 20-foot tall pole or bar and removing it and bringing it down to where a person can manage it, and then like taking the plants in and out required automation that was expensive, and then that became a
Mm-hmm.
bottleneck. Now your
Yeah.
robot isn't able to tell the difference between this stalk thickness and this stalk, so now you need data to train your machine vision so it can handle the
Mm-hmm.
irregular, and then so just one decision compounds into all these other externalities, these third order results, and it's just like, man,
Yeah.
they if $1 billion can't solve that R&D problem, how much would it cost? 10 billion?
Well,
Like,
it's
it might be
also it could be
possible, but
early, right? Because it's also like think
yes.
about how like everyone has the same like phone, right? No matter how rich you are, you can't get a better phone than someone else, right? And also now it's like okay, AI, like the best AI, everyone can pretty much get it. You know, if you want to spend $20 or $100 a month or whatever. So it's like that technology literally was not available no matter how much billions of dollars you raised. And it's like
Right,
everyone's
right, right,
trying to
right.
build robots,
Hmm.
they're trying to build AI. It's like you guys are doing the wrong thing. Like you should just be waiting like for AI to
Right.
be smart because you're like, "Oh, I need to get all this special data to train this machine vision model."
Maybe a
Like
humanoid robot now could.
well, yeah, maybe human, but also just maybe the intelligence has multiple layers. It's like because like the dumber the AIs is, the less it understands what it's looking at. It's like, oh, if I'm like a dumb robot, it's like you show me enough data, I'll be able to say like this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this. You can train that. But as the robots get more and more complex, get the bigger neural networks, they understand the concept, so they can think about things from many layers, just like people would be. So they don't need like a lot of data, and
Right,
that's
right.
where we're going to have in a very short amount of time where you have the AI cameras in the farm that have intelligence built in. You barely need to train them on
Yep.
anything. And also with the advances in robotics, which is all related to that artificial brain, I think that's where things are really going to take off. And, people were just very excited about the future, which is great, but it just was, just a little bit early. So like, what you've been doing really is just solving the fundamental problem of like, can I run any type of sustainable business whatsoever with indoor farming? Like that's the move then. And it's still the move now. We obviously still have to make that transition, but we shouldn't be making any like big leaps with, farming. Really, it's more just like getting the robots into the farm, which obviously are general purpose, which can do basically anything.
Yeah, I wonder too. I'm not against robots. So, okay, my big vision here basically is I figured out
Yeah.
pallet-based farming, and I can now retrofit any building basically into a high output farm. And it turns out when you use a pallet, your project costs go down, your operation, your margins go up because of the efficiency and, of the layout and everything. Um, the inside the pallet is where all the magic happens. And it turns out, everyone is focused on perishables like salad, and that's great. But something that's much harder to grow, but very, very profitable are supplement ingredients. And so you can
Mm-hmm.
grow a ton of material, harvest it, dry it, and it becomes concentrated like plant molecule feedstock, you might call it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
clean and bioactive, and it's literally a dietary supplement, legally a dietary
Yeah,
supplement. And so
that makes
this
a lot of sense.
actually it unlocks the whole model because instead of paying 50, selling it for $5 a pound to your grocery store for 5-ounce clamshell, we're selling it at like $1,000 a kilogram, $500 a pound dried on the internet. It ships well. It has that, all these benefits, and now we can pay rent. We can pay the light bill. We can pay,
Right.
and the food actually becomes like not a secondary issue, a what would you call it? Maybe
It's
a
a harder
cost center.
problem to solve. It's a
Well,
harder
it
problem.
doesn't,
It's like
but it doesn't need to be super profitable. It can
no.
be
Oh, I see a loss leader.
a lower
Yeah.
margin product
Yeah.
that covers
Yeah.
its own expenses, but like,
Yeah.
and now food prices going up, we can meet them there. And the third piece of this like opportunity is like, okay, we got the pallets, we have the supplement, and now with this depressed real estate market around like office towers, there's all of a sudden all this land, all this square footage of commercial real
Yeah.
estate in city centers that nobody can do anything else with, and you cannot retrofit into a normal. The ceilings are 10 feet. You can't put in a 20-foot tall, you know what I mean, tower in there.
No.
We can go in. It makes financial sense for us, and so these are like the three. All of a sudden, things changed. To your point, and now the reality is completely different, and
Mm-hmm.
it actually works, and it works like really well, which is crazy because everyone was trying so hard for 10 years to make it work, and it's just they were
Is it
too
the
early.
real estate? Like what is the variables that is now making it? Because obviously, like you're saying, like obviously growing a product that is like much higher value. Like
Yeah,
obviously that makes sense.
that's the
Is
main
that the
piece.
thing? That was the main
Yeah.
piece because it's almost like
Yes.
growing weed, but it's like
Yes.
some
Exactly.
other thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
That business
But
model where it actually can make simply
less
make
light
phenomenal.
because we're not fruiting these flowers,
Yeah.
and uh, there's a this lets us like pick and choose where we want to be. We don't need to build buildings around our equipment. Some of these
Yeah.
vertical farms, they need very special build outs because the equipment is very special. And then with the tariffs, and like some guys are getting their stuff from Europe, and so that's an issue. Um, it's clear to me that in 10 years time it'll be obvious to everybody that pallet based indoor farming is the only way to make it work. And once you do, though, all of a sudden, actually, it works so well. You can. Here's the crazy thing, right? Okay, we got supplements. I think I'm one of the first, maybe if the only person growing supplements in a vertical farm. It's like it's really hard. It's really hard. But you got supplements, and then that material can actually get processed into pharmaceutical ingredients through some yet to be priced out, like complex problems.
Like
That's
you would
for
actually do that. Like you wouldn't just sell it to
we
someone
would
else. Like you would do
yeah, we
the
would like
processing.
pay for. That's the question. Each molecule is different and needs like a different extraction one. So we're focusing on our
Right.
first one, and then we'll see what it'll take and how much it
But
costs.
why
But
not
like,
just sell it like to someone else? Like, do you feel that this is a better strategy than just trying to grow more mass and have less variables and like sell the product, or is it that like it's not going to work out from just
no,
selling
I
the
don't
fruit?
know. I don't know what it's the big question mark there is. I don't know what it's going to take to convince pharma to buy our molecules.
Pharma.
And
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, do we need to,
Yeah.
okay, the first one we have to probably prove and test and validate and show and hold their hands, and then maybe the second molecule they will process it, or it's like
Mm-hmm.
a big question mark. I don't know what it'll take. But that's an option. The other thing is though, in kind of in the least less complex direction,
Mm-hmm.
you have greens, and you can grow packaged salads, teas, and herbs, like
Mm-hmm.
value add products. And then you get to like mushrooms. You can grow all sorts of mushrooms indoors.
Yeah.
And then you get into like seafood. I want to have tilapia and shrimp and trout coming out of these farms. It'll be a premium price point, but it'll be more delicious than like anything else you can get, basically, because it's growing right there. And then the same equipment though can be like further repurposed to grow um, animal feed, livestock feed, baby
Mm-hmm.
puree, uh, uh, fertilizer, organic. Once you have the fish, their waste gets turned into organic fertilizer. It's really dense,
Mm-hmm.
and like a bioactive like lives like a soil remediator. We can grow like certain bacteria and enzymes and stuff that will they've been shown to like break down heavy metals, remediate soil, reintroduce some minerals to it, and so like all of a sudden each vertical farm can become like that's what I mean by terraforming because our society is like
I see.
so toxic. It's not just like our culture, the water, the air, the shapewear, the amount of BPA we get exposed to in a week is enough to enforce obesity. Like you can't escape BPA induced obesity. And it's like, dude, it gets so dark. I found out shapewear
What
is
is that?
it's like stretchy
Oh
leggings,
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of stuff. When you
yeah.
sweat, it pulls the BPA out of the plastic and delivers it into your skin and right into your
Mm-hmm.
bloodstream. When you sweat with shapewear on your skin, you're like it's like a fentanyl patch for BPA.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy. And like whereas, plastic water bottles, so on and so forth. And it turns out in a vertical farm, it's like the only way you can grow this new molecule called sulforaphane, which like blocks and removes these things from your body. And so I really believe that the future of the city is actually in these vertical farming districts where we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
making local food ingredients, local jobs, all that stuff, but just like economic activity. So that's my big picture, and so I'm shopping for my first building, and we're gonna prove it, on a floor by floor basis. Um, and that's why I'm like so excited to talk to you. It's like, oh, we're gonna need a lot of dosing. There's gonna be a
All right.
lot of
Hell yeah.
dosing going on in that building.
Yeah,
Each
we'll be
floor is gonna
moving
be
all
its
that
own.
water. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Do you worry about like synthetic chemicals, like not like bad chemicals, but like if you're trying to create like medicines, like wouldn't like I mean, I honestly I don't know a lot of stuff, but I just know at this point like they can synthesize like tons and tons of molecules for like all sorts of medicines and stuff, and I would wonder is it worth it to get natural grown medicines if like companies would who make drugs or make things would just synthesize them, and especially with like
Dude.
using AI
Okay.
and stuff, like
I
I feel like
I
that'd be
don't know
really
about
bad.
every molecule, but the one we're focused on, sulforaphane,
Yeah.
for some reason, the synthetic version does not absorb nearly as well. And
Mm-hmm.
the that so there's something about synthetic versions that don't absorb as good as natural versions for some
There's
reason,
got to be a
right?
reason. Could you solve
Well,
that? Like, could it be figured out?
it's every supplement on the market deals with this. Like the entire
Mm-hmm.
supplement supply chain. I don't know about medicine so much, but the supplement
Mm-hmm.
supply chain,
Right.
it's all synthetics, basically concentrated, synthesized molecules, and they're clean and they're like safe, but they don't absorb at a high rate, and so that's why they have to put 1,000% of your daily requirement because 10 or 20% absorb. So they try to increase the dosage so
Mm-hmm.
that the nominal amount of the molecule gets in your blood is higher, and it just like doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin C, it does, it works okay, but like turmeric is like 5%, and it doesn't just more turmeric does not increase more.
Like you need to eat like a actual
There's
turmeric
all
root versus like a turmeric powder.
that that would increase absorption, but ultimately there's like some phenomena, it's called like a complex of molecules that
Mm-hmm.
surround or are associated with the target molecule that help it absorb. And so, like
Mm-hmm.
natural derived manganese has a really high absorption rate versus synthetic, and it's like shown
Yeah.
over and over again. And so, when they in the supplement world, they can't get better ingredients because they can't make them differently than they're
Mm-hmm.
making them now. They're all synthesized. In the medical world, these pharmacologically active molecules, they uh, they don't have the absorption problem, but they have the side effect problem. And so like these things are really potent, and but on the way to the site where um, they're targeting inside the body, they like bump into all sorts of other receptors and cause all these damages. plants just like make perfect complex molecules, and they don't like interfere, and they don't. It's hard to OD on them. They absorb at a higher rate, and so
Got a lot
will
of
there
fiber,
be
other
you
things like
know
that. Yeah.
I don't know the answer to your question, but it's like really crazy how uh, this is like a major issue for us basically as a society.
Hmm.
And then something about sulforaphane, you can't. It has to come from a whole plant source. The absorption rate like
Hmm.
sky jumps off the table. Um, so I don't know. In the end, it's like
Yeah, no, I'm gonna look it
competition is
up. I'm
competition.
interested.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, and of course, like obviously we also have to be like dynamic with what we're doing, right? So it's like maybe right now it's like it makes sense to grow this, and I'm saying I don't know, but it's like you're filling out a system to grow all types of things that are like this, and so you grow sulforaphane, and maybe that's really successful. You don't grow anything else, or like maybe they figured out a way to synthesize it, and you grow other things. Because I
Exactly.
also like because I
Who
think
knows?
also about like what people want, right? Because like even kind of this is kind of getting back to our conversation about like dirt, organic, synthetic, nutrients, right? Because like you're saying like, oh, like the synthetic nutrients are good, where the organic nutrients, it's like there's a lot more going on there, but somehow the synthetic nutrients, when they go into the plant, then it becomes a natural thing, and then
Hmm.
it can be used. Whereas if you synthesize the chemicals directly, it wouldn't work. So, um, it's just there's just a lot there, and I think there's just a lot for us to like uncover and understand. Because there's also like there's the sales and marketing aspect, because it's like people, it doesn't matter what's good or not. It's like I want my vegetables to come out of dirt, like so
Yeah.
some people say that, like, but it's also like how much do people care about certain things, right? Obviously, like people think that they care about things, but then you see people go to the grocery store and they buy whatever they buy, like
Oh yeah.
the
Try charging $1 more for packaged salads.
yeah, you
Sales
know
will just.
exactly,
And
exactly,
so,
sometimes,
but
yeah, exactly, go ahead.
I think to your point too, though, it's like if these growers, if these food companies take the artificial meat movement, right?
Hmm.
Not just synthetic meat like lab grown meat, but plant based, Impossible burgers and all these things.
Hmm.
Nobody would listen to me, but I kept yelling about it because I was in the field, and I'm like, mouthfeel is great, price point is great, sizzle, I get it, aroma, all of it. Uh, but if you make it as nutritious or more nutritious than call it traditional meat, the
Hmm.
body will crave it, and you will want,
Yeah.
like, the reason we get the what is it, not
Yeah, we
salvation.
salivate. Yeah, we
We
get
salivate when
we get
we
hungry.
hear
Yeah.
skate, because your brain knows, ethics aside, there is really important nutrients in that steak, and it'll keep me alive for days on end. That industry where they made the alternative versions of the meat, they had an opportunity to just like fortify it with more nutritional value, not just flavor. And I
Hmm.
feel like that was a big shot where they missed. Like, dude, if you eat this Impossible Burger, you're actually gonna get twice the nutrition than, because we added it in at the end. We could have done like a, you know what I mean, a plant
It's
based.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Nobody really
And just so you
focused
know,
on that.
I've
It
been
was
eating
hard
that.
enough to
Like
get
I
it.
eat that stuff. Yeah. It's interesting to think
Are you
about
a big
what would
plant
make
based
people. Yeah,
meat
like I've
guy?
been vegan almost 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Because
So,
again, it's
what's
all
your
like
take on
because
this?
well, so I think there's a lot of variables, right? So like obviously, like with the plant, I mean, the burger is such an easy thing to compare because it uses like over 10 times less resources, sometimes between like 10 and 100 times less resources, like land, water, obviously those are like obviously animal cruelty, like all those things, it doesn't have as nearly as much of an impact. And then in terms of like the negatives of eating animal products, it doesn't have like all the cholesterol, the saturated fat. So it's slightly healthier, but I would say like it's not a health food. I don't think it's a health food, but I think that, but like again, it's like, is a burger a health food? Like I would say like a burger is not healthy. I would say the plant based burger is also not like healthy. But then it's also like, okay, compare it to what? I mean, that's the key when you're talking about health, is you compare it to some other thing, right? So like I'd say like the Beyond Burger is healthy compared to an animal burger. Um, but I guess for me, like I'm not like the person that like needs this. Like I wouldn't eat meat because I know how destructive it is. You know, for example, like what you're talking about before, like why is there all this shit in the soil and in the water and all that stuff? You know, because of a lot of it is because of animal farming, because we're growing uh, maybe 10 times more food. Like basically, it's like you can like you take 10 like acres of food and that goes into a cow, you know, and then you get like 1 acre's worth of food, right? So if the people ate
from
the
the
food
livestock feed.
directly, yeah, it's like instead of the livestock eating the feed and
Yeah,
concentrating it into a smaller amount of food, and then creating lots of waste, it's like you could have people eating that food. And you can have 10 times more people eating the food. So like that's like another thing of like, okay, so say you're, you know, you're growing like cattle, right? You're growing cattle. It's like, okay, you have to use all this space to grow cattle. Then you have to use all this space to grow all the food that the cattle's eating. But say we're like, okay, can we figure out how to make like a plant-based meat in a lab or something, like, or grow like, you know, plant-based proteins like soy, or like, you know, different like wheat protein and stuff like that. You could get hundred, like over 100 or even 1,000 times more food for the amount of like resources you're putting in.
that's
So, you
crazy.
know, and I think it really is important. Like, I think that the mind, like the way people feel about things is actually like the most important thing. So, like
Yeah,
you're
because
saying,
that's the
oh,
rubber meets the road.
maybe if we put nutrients, more nutrition in the meat, people will like it. But then maybe people will be like, oh no, I don't want nutrition in my meat. I want just meat. So it's really hard to say. Like, you know, it is. You know, because a lot of people are waiting for like cell-based meat. They're like, oh, I'm not going to go
Hmm.
vegan until the meat's coming from a cell. And then I'm like, okay, well, why is the food like that? Why is like the plant-based meat like that currently exists is not enough? You're like, what nutrient are you looking
Dude,
for specifically? And
that's
it
the
has it all
thing.
in there. You know, it has.
I,
No one knows, but it's there. Like you can just take a blood test
but
and
it's
know that it's
like
there.
it comes down to this feeling
Feeling,
of
yes,
yearning for A versus B, even though on paper A has the same as B. It's like how do I say this? Just because they put it in the burger doesn't mean it's bioavailable, and
yeah,
so your body might be able to like tell, or it knows historically, like if you eat one or the other, there has to be a way to unlock this where a plant-based or a non, beef burger can be just as appetizing as a non, you know what I
yeah.
mean, like
I
craveable,
mean,
like there
I
has
feel
to
like
be a
it is. Well, I think the problem is like, see, like you're probably haven't have enough experience like eating it, right? So basically,
I
a lot of
started in the
people
early
get
days, but
used
I
to
haven't eaten
like,
a recent one in
yeah,
years.
like I think the key is like, so for, I mean, I can talk about myself. Like for me, like
Yeah.
I'm an extremely rational person, right? So like, and I'm not like I don't need anything
Are
to
you
be
too
true.
rational? Is that
No.
possible?
I mean, maybe if you can find something wrong with me, but basically, it's like if I see like something could be done differently, that could be better. I'm not going to be like, oh, but I really how this feels, or this is like. So I'm just like, oh, like I didn't realize that, like, you know, if you stop eating meat, if you go vegan, you save 100 animals a year. And like there's literally like a website, you can, this vegan calculator, you type in how much years you've been vegan, you see like an incredible amount of savings that you've done. So it's like, actually, if people want to make an important difference in the world without doing hardly anything at all, it's like, what's the easiest way to get the best return? Is you just switch to a plant-based diet. It's going to have a lot of great effects for the world. Like, you know, you're not going to be hurting animals. You're going to have a better effect on the environment. And like, you know, to what you're saying is like, oh, is the nutrients are not there? It's like, well, that's there. All the nutrients are coming from plants. Like all the animals eat plants, and then that goes into the animal. The animals are not creating new nutrients that plants don't have. Like for example, one thing is people talk about B12, that's injected into animals because
What is
they
that
so they
again?
can
It's a
have,
vitamin, but
well, it's considered a vitamin. It's
okay.
actually a
I just hear it. I
bacteria.
don't know.
Well, yeah. So basically, like, if you go on a vegan, like, say you're like used to eating a standard diet and you go on a vegan diet, um, one of the nutrients you might not get is B12. But I mean, if you drink like any type of plant-based milk, or eat like maybe any type of those meats, I don't know if there's B12 in them, but or you could just take like a supplement, it'll be in there. And then another one is like vitamin D3, which is, you know, made by the sun,
Mhm.
and you know it gets absorbed in animal products too.
I think
Um,
mushrooms have that one, don't they? Some
yeah, so
mushrooms.
they grow some mushrooms, exactly. So if you want to get like vegan D3, like you can get mushrooms. So what I do actually is I take a supplement. It has like 7 different nutrients in it. I don't really feel like it's that big of a deal, but just take it to make sure that I'm, getting
Oh
everything
no,
right.
dude,
Because,
we're all. None of us
people
have a
once again,
complete nutrition.
no one lives a complete nutrition, right? So it's like even if
No,
like
it's impossible.
everything is missing something. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's not too, because I mean, I just honestly like everything to me is just so different from what everyone thinks. Because I'm just like, yo, AI is so crazy. We have
Yeah,
no idea what's
yeah,
gonna happen.
I know.
The standard, because it's like everyone's arguing about what's healthier. It's like, yo, people die either like you die at 70, 80, 90, you still die no matter what you're eating, right? People are dying, although people that eat plant-based diets, they have shown to be living longer and stuff, but it's not like double the life. It's just like
200
a
years.
couple
Yeah, yeah.
years, stuff like that. But really the unlocks are going to be like genetics. Like we're going to figure out ways to understand our bodies at a much, much deeper level and like fundamentally solve those problems that cause us to like
Dude,
age and
I am
deteriorate.
all for that. In the
Yeah.
meantime, I
In the
just
meantime.
want a chemical-free diet. It is the more I Oh my God, I'm a bad party guest because a couple cocktails into me and I start talking
Uh-huh.
about some latest like finding about like dude, we all have 26 pesticides in our blood right now. We get enough BPA in 2 days to, induce obesity. Uh they just showed that glyphosate leads to a bunch of cancers, which like
Mm-hmm.
were known historically. Glyphosate's the Roundup weed
Yeah.
killer,
Yeah.
and then the problem is it's in 99% of our crops, and it's you get cheap flour in America. You're getting microdose of glyphosate, and there's 1,000 more of these chemicals that are not uh, banned, and they're not even allowed. We have some fungicides in America that are not allowed to be used in the country they're manufactured in. They're so toxic, but they ship them to
Yeah.
America anyway. It's just like crazy. And don't get me wrong, I can't wait for the future. I am becoming increasingly worried that we we may not get there. Like the problem is so much worse than people want to dig into. Like our collapsing birth rate, I'm now convinced personally that it's caused by hormone disruptors
You don't think
in
it's by
the lived
money?
environment. I
You
don't
don't think
think
it's
that's the main
because
driver.
I'm
Hear me
pretty
out, hear
sure
me
it
out,
is.
hear me out. I got 3 kids. They're expensive. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But if you can't help, do you have kids?
No.
Okay, so if you can't help but like if you make kids, you just go to live a cheaper life. You buy the minivan, you go to the suburbs, you downsize, you don't, and then on college is the big one. They pay for themselves, they get a scholarship, they go to trade school, military, whatever it is. Like you can offset that expense, and on a daily basis, it's not that expensive. Maybe when they're
Mm-hmm.
teens and they're ripping through food, I get it. I don't get me wrong, but people are feeling less compelled to have kids. And like what I'm trying to say is I feel like in the old days you couldn't help but have a couple kids by accident
Yeah, I mean that was the
and then
thing
you
we
deal
did.
with
Like
it.
we had a very clear like path. Like everyone had like a clear path. Like it's like okay, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you get a house. You know what I mean? Like that was like the structure that was
That
more
is
common,
true.
and like it's changed a lot. And because also like not saying it's just money. Like I mean, I'm sure kids are
No,
having
no,
more
no, it's
money
a
for a long
factor.
time.
Don't get me wrong.
But people are like there's so much fun shit to do now in the world that people
Yes,
are used to
yes.
like having all this fun and kind of being kids for longer. You know, I mean, like, I honestly do
Yes.
sort of feel like a kid still.
With a little
And
grown-up money, that's like so much fun.
yeah, exactly. So people have all this fun. They're like, I don't want to like, if I have a kid, then it's like I have to deal with all this stuff, and so
Yeah.
I think there's just a
But
lot of
that's what I'm
yeah,
saying though.
yeah,
We used to not be able to avoid, like there was more lust, there was more sexual tension, there was more you just end up in a relationship and you end up having kids.
nothing else to do.
Now, well, that's true. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
like now, sperm count is down. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the testosterone is down.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the birth rate is down, and it tracks perfectly with GDP. The richer the country is per person, the lower the birth rate per person. And
Mm-hmm.
my like another thing that also is higher in countries with higher GDP, these are industrialized nations. They
Mm-hmm.
have more built environments, office buildings, synthetic fibers in their cars, toner in the
What about
office.
India? India is a big country, and they have like tons of pollution, and like there's a lot of people that live there, and like people are probably being born there.
My working hypothesis, and it is that it's a subset of chemicals that are driving this, and
Mm-hmm.
where you don't see those chemicals, they're not as affected. There's a third piece too, which is like genetics. So when
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to get lab mice as obese as possible, they like test Ozempic on them. They're not
Mm-hmm.
born obese. They buy the mice that have the genetics for obesity. They give them a 60% fat corn oil diet, so
Mm-hmm.
just a ton of corn oil, and then they literally inject BPA into them because BPA fast tracks obesity. And so if you don't have one of those three things, you might be okay. You know, if you don't have the ton of the BPA, but you have the bad
I feel
genetics, or
like
you
the
have, you
corn
know what I
oil.
mean?
It's probably the corn oil that
Yeah,
does a lot
yeah.
of
I
it. You
mean,
know, I feel like you
you
can't get
know,
fat if you don't eat like a lot of food.
yeah. And then, but the
You know, maybe you
scary
can
thing
have
about
fat cells.
the obesogenic chemicals,
Yeah.
they short circuit the brain and they force your calories to over index for fat production. And then they
Mm-hmm.
also destroy they make the hormone that your body uses to track fat cells
Mm-hmm.
uh, become like harder to, um, your body can't see the fat cells. So it's secretly producing too many. It can't see them, so it thinks you're starving, so it tells you to eat. Too many of those calories get put into fat that it can't see. And so this cycle just keeps repeating. And like in America, everything is calories are cheap, BPA is everywhere. If you have that genetic predisposition, I think that's why you see a unique body type in America that you don't see elsewhere. Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, the brain would just use the batteries it has in storage. It wouldn't tell you to go, if it knew there was a warehouse of energy, it wouldn't tell you to go mine minerals and produce batteries. I got batteries in the drawer. Let me just use these.
Yeah,
It's
it's
these
too bad we haven't
chemicals.
evolved. It's we like our society evolved faster than our our biology. So
Yeah, wow, so true.
we're like, oh yeah, food, fat, great. That'll be great. So that if there's no food, then we don't have to worry. You know,
Yeah,
our instinct. That was a good instinct for a very long time, and
a very long
now
time
it's
for
being
sure.
fucked with.
And now it's totally being hacked by these companies. Um, so that's my meta analysis is that these 5.5 trillion pounds of chemicals we're making every year globally, they end up in our bodies eventually, a percentage of them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like it's adding up. We can't escape it. More chemicals are being added, and we need to clean. We need to protect ourselves while we clean up the ecosystem and the supply chain, because I'm worried these things are literally going to cause, dude, just the chronic diseases that they encourage. Chronic chemical exposure causes chronic disease. That's like 80% of our healthcare budget is dealing with chronic illnesses. If we could lower that, we would actually save trillions of dollars a year. Everyone's worried about the
Yeah.
budget. And I'm like, dude, you know, we have like some big problems. I hope AI can help us solve some of these problems, maybe identify, which chemicals like have to get
Uh,
banned
no,
immediately.
it's the food. Like, yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
the food.
complicated. Yeah, it's the food. I just want to let you know I do have to basically get going. I have some stuff to do right now, but
Dude, thanks for jumping
yeah,
on. What's the
yeah, this was
website? Can
fun.
I plug it?
Yeah, please, Nuravine.com.
Do you
And
have
here,
any?
I'll just show you my T-shirt.
Yeah.
Nuravine.
And do you have any consumer products? Is it all? What's the main?
It's more focused on like prosumer to professional. I'm not saying we're not gonna have more products coming out in the future for everyone, like for like the home growers. So if you're like if you like grow at home, or you're pretty small scale, but you want like the best doser ever, then yeah, like we have it. Probably starting around that like $3,000 pricing. We might be able to get it lower pretty soon. So just make sure you stay tuned. But if you're doing any type of indoor commercial, any scale, you want inline dosing, batch dosing, recirculating, we can do all of that. And also now moving into the outdoor fields. And I'm just specing a doser right now that can do 150 gallons of inline dosing per minute. Each part of nutrients is 2.5 gallons of nutrients per minute.
Which would cover how many square feet? That's a lot.
Um, That would be like
Acres.
that would be like 50 acres a week. Like if you like that's
Oh
about
my God, that's so
that's his
intense.
weekly amount. Like yeah.
Well, I love it. Thank you for jumping on. I will get this to you ASAP.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah,
thanks for doing it. I'm glad we could just make it happen like that.
I know, me too. And I'll keep you posted. And I'm glad we made a friend here of the
Yeah,
show. If you have any announcements, let me know. I'd love to be part of your, PR strategy. This is really fun for me.
cool. Hell yeah, I'll let you know when anything comes up. And pleasure to talk to you, man.
Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you, Alex.
You too,
Take care.
Arash. Bye bye.
Bye.